What's up, everybody? It's your boy Kel, and for today's team, we are going to be putting together a team that is one that I not only have been wanting to do, or a concept that I've been interested in, basically due to the characters that can fit it. But today is going to be one of those videos where it could be dedicated to a particular concept, right? And when I say it's a dedication video, no, it's not a video that is dedicated to like a movie or TV show that will be coming out for. There is no TV show or movie this month coming out. Not that I know of, or if there is, not one that I am ready to watch because I have to watch the precursor or something. But also not in the way of a holiday. For as far as I can think of at the top of my head, there also is no particular holiday or anything within the month of March. But that doesn't mean that we couldn't dedicate this video to some type of ideal, right? And the ideal that we will be dedicating this video to is the concept of Women's Month. If you guys have not been aware, National Women's Month is a real month. Unlike most of y'all, when y'all always say like National Best Friend Day or National Women's Day or National this day, this or this day, back when I was in high school, I thought it was just days I was just making up. But no, National Women's Month is a real thing. And it's usually celebrated within the month of March. National Women's Month. There's the National Women Equality Day. I think there's a National Women's History Month, which is in all the total concept of what National Women's Month is about. But anyway, it goes. With that being said, that is the concept we are going to be focusing today's video on, and possibly even the other recruitment season based videos that we will have to be posted up this month. But when it comes to the team that we're going to be doing, today we are going to be looking into the Marvel Universe. Now, I know some of y'all may know who we are doing or who was in the thumbnail of the video, or may know who the FEMiZONIANs are based off of the title. And if not, some of y'all are probably really curious. Well, the character you saw in the beginning of the thumbnail is the character known as Thundra. She is a Marvel, I don't want to say hero because she's not always a hero. She's not always a villain. She's more of a character who does what you gotta do for the. She's an anti-hero, a Marvel anti-hero, right? She's a Marvel anti-hero who is a warrior woman. And that is the type of concept our female-based team is going to be focusing on today. Because the idea of warrior women are really fascinating to me. Like, one of my other favorite groups are the DC Universe's Amazons. And that is technically the type of team we're going to be recruiting today. But instead, they're not called the Marvel Amazons. That's what they are. But they're called the FEMiZONs. And like I said, they're basically the DC Universe's Amazons with a twist. But the idea of warrior women have always been interesting to me in a way where I always saw like certain particular women within the Marvel Universe. And I was like, wow, they would be unique. And I thought about doing like a war team, a War Avengers team like we saw within the War of the Realms series. But y'all know me, if I have another idea and certain characters fit the idea before I get to the next idea I'm planning, then so be it. But yeah, the idea of warrior women have always been interesting to me. You know, I always try to give the females in comics and the females across fiction more love and appreciation anyway, more than them just being litigated to simplified normality versions of what a woman usually is, like a mother or a caregiver or love interest. And I think Marvel's better at doing that than a lot of fictional franchises. And when it comes to the FEMiZONs or the character of Thundra and a certain other character that she is famously known for being connected to, that is technically why she was created. To I guess, to go against the grain of what a normal woman usually is. And I think like whoever created her had the same idea in mind. Now when it comes to the Amazons, you know the Amazons are usually known to be a group of women, usually connected to the mythological gods, mainly Greek, and they are supposed to be like a reflection off of the Amazons of myth, right? From the land of Amazon or Amazonia in the Brazils. And usually they're tied to like a lineage thing. And there's barely no men or never any men. They subjugate men or rape them or whatever to fill out their ranks. But the Amazons are mostly a protective force for the world, the protectors of men's world, right? But when it comes to the FEMiZONs, when the Amazons are more about defense, the FEMiZONs are more about conquest and dominance. And I'm not saying that like within a evil sort of term, even though that's what conquest and dominance usually relegates to. But if you keep around long enough and stay around long enough to hear the rest of the stories about who I'm recruiting and everything, you see what I mean. So it's not like they're particularly evil. It's more of a survival type of thing that they do. But like overall, if you want to sum up what the FEMiZONs are, the FEMiZONians are basically there to test the world through conflict. Where systems were failing and stuff, there were collapsing states, war-torn regions, post-apocalyptic zones, and stuff like that. They don't conquer for land. They conquer to basically prove themselves. Because while we haven't gotten to the characters yet, basically the whole idea of where the concept of the FEMiZONs and Thundra are is a future timeline, which is I guess is another reality. You know how Marvel does that. It's complicated. But in the future, I guess men were more asshole based than they think we are already. And it was like they were just dicks and stuff and the world was torn and stuff. So they were really like taking women into account of being slaves and everything. So a certain woman rose up to try to basically back them down, or a certain woman rose up to say like we're not gonna be listening to no man or whatever, and they basically want to flip the switch and not let men rule them or not let men break their society anymore. So that is what they started to do, and when they rose up, the core refinement for them was basically that, like I said, they was trying to break stagnant powers and eliminate tyranny. So those are the concepts and stuff for the characters that will be applied to the team that we are recruiting today. Like usual, the same rules apply. Because I want to spread more love to my female characters and do possibly more female-based teams within the Marvel Universe, we're only going to be doing 5 members, especially seeing that how this team is very specific and certain characters that I like fit them and other characters I like are only conditional or whatever. But even though with the characters I like, if you look at their comic book history, you would probably say, well, she's now this or she's now that. But I think I found a way in which I like the story of them being placed into a warrior-based team more prominently, or I would like to see them more in this area, or I feel like this definement for them could work in a way where it's useful to a narrative that we could possibly see one day. Well, no, scratch that. Yes. Well, let me slow down. No, don't scratch what I was just saying about how they are defined, but scratch what I said about doing the 5 members, because we're actually also going to add a supporting staff team of 2 additional members. But the people who are on my supporting staff team could also be used on the main field. So it's going to be a 7-member team or a 5-member team with 2 support staff. However you want to look at it, we're drawing 7 members for today's draft. And to be honest with y'all, this is a team that I'm really not that sure about in the way that I formed it, only because of the fact that when you look at certain members within this team, that I'm about to draft. They all come from different spheres of the Marvel Universe. Some of them are space based, some of them are other timelines and stuff like that. And some of them, for more or less, if you was to put them in a normal story, you would probably say they will automatically crash ass right then there, right? Or that they don't belong in the same book because of the different spheres that they're from, or because of who they are as characters or whatever. But if you focus on the fact that they are conquerors and warrior based women, focus mainly on that fact, I think I have made it in a way where it could work even according to each and every individual's personal character arc and or history or what they're usually about. So even though I'm more or less certain about this team than most of my other teams I have formed, it's still a team I think that can conceptually work, and it's a team that I want to put together because, like I said, I love my female characters. A lot of them need to get more response, more recognition, and more prominence. And the idea of a warrior-based female who's just like strong and made for war or made to fight, made to be a brute. I love that idea. So we're gonna work with that today. So yeah, and don't worry about the whole timeline and alternate universe thing, because like I said, it's never clear to me when it comes to Marvel if it's like an alternative universe we're looking at or the future or whatever. And it got even more confusing to me after the whole Secret Wars thing. Like, so did all the future events get wiped out, or are they actually alternate timelines that are still there? But anyway, it goes. The two characters, well, mainly the one character that we should be focusing on, Thundra, ended up coming and I think staying within the Marvel Universe. And she set up a FEMiZONIAN court or land within the main 616. So we don't even have to worry about the whole timeline thing. I just mention it because it's integral to understand part of her story and stuff. But with that being said, we can get right into it. And as you probably have already discovered or figured out, the first character who will be the leader of this team is going to be Thundra. Now, outside of the information I already gave you about Thundra, Thundra, the way most people know of Thundra is due to the fact that she was one of the females, or the most prominent female, that was part of the, what was it, Fearsome Four or whatever, the mirror reflection of the Fantastic Four. And when I say mirror reflection, they didn't have the same powers, but they based their team on the dynamic that they have. Three guys, one who's a scientist, a strong woman and everything. Yeah, she's the most prominent female there. But if that doesn't ring a bell, you will also know that she is a character who has had some type of connection to Bruce Banner's Hulk. And when I mean connection, she is the baby mama, or at least one of the baby mama of Hulk. Um, so if you know of Thundra, or if that at least sounds familiar to you, then you know who I would talk about. But like I said, when it comes to Thundra, Thundra is a character who comes from an alternative universe where men were basically tyrannical, and they basically let their egos and stuff and war tear apart the world, and they started enslaving women and all this. So there was a group of women who was like, we want someone to like help us back them down. We want someone to help us take back control, or at least to mediate. And during this timeline, the men were so cruel because they basically sterilized 95% of the women, right? And for the ones who weren't sterilized, they was forcing them to have kids or whatever. But the ones who weren't sterilized, for them to be repopulated, most of the time, you had to be a test tube baby. And essentially, while most of the women within this timeline are now genetically bred, Thundra was one of the last natural born ones. She was naturally born, and like I said, this whole alternative timeline the woman was in it, they were all about survival because they were tired of, the system bringing them down. They didn't want to be subject to anybody's rule. The world was already tyrannical, filled with corruption and people blowing it up and everything. So they were basically put in a position where they could fight back. And she ended up being like the chosen champion slash warrior. Well, no, that's not true. It wasn't like she was chosen. It's more like that she had this belief and this philosophy that aligned with what they were doing, but that some people didn't agree with. And she ended up doing like a whole trial by combat thing in which people decided to follow her. And of course, when you have someone who follows you, they believe in what you are suggesting. And the suggestion she had was like a lot of the people within this timeline, a lot of the women, they believed in what the DC Amazons believed. They believed in being separated from the world. But Thundra basically thought that was suicide. She was like, no, to rule is to basically prepare for anything that's coming. So it's not like she's trying to, like I said, she's not trying to take over for any evil means. She wants to basically take over, I guess, or she wants to implement herself in the world so she has a better footing in it. So when the world is inevitably attacked, she can, send out her forces and protect it as best. So with that being said, that's why I'm choosing Thundra to lead the team. She's going to be like the leader. Of course, she's going to stay in that position. But outside of that, I just always appreciated Thundra. Like when you see Thundra, you also think about characters like Titania. I can't stand Titania because of her origin. Her origin is so like, ugh. But when it comes to Thundra, I always wanted to see more of Thundra. Her attitude, the whole origin of her story and everything is really interesting. But I know that for the most part, she deals with like the whole character, and I don't read whole comics, so I would love to see her in a separated comic that was about like the FEMiZONs within themselves, or just like a solo series that she may have. So that's why I'm choosing Thundra. Now, while I may be choosing Thundra, there's only really going to be one other, I guess you could call her FEMiZON, that is like a real FEMiZON within the comics. That's going to be a Parach's team. I think that when you're dealing with like a team that has this type of dynamic the way that they do, you don't really have to just subjugate it to the people of that particular tribe, especially when it comes to Marvel and the women, because there's a lot of women within Marvel who expand the warrior category. But when you look at them, they're expanded throughout the different type of mythologies, the cosmology, the mutant side of things, the human side of things, and all that other stuff. So when I'm doing my FEMiZON court, we're going to be touching a lot of those different areas. Well, not a lot of those different areas, but it's going to be a court that's made of different species, I guess you could call them. But each of the women within the court are going to be warrior or conquering based type of characters. Outside of the only other person I'm going to add up here, which is Thunder's daughter, aka Lyra, aka the Savage She-Hulk. And when it comes to the Savage She-Hulk, like I said, Savage She-Hulk was actually genetically made, right? And she's the daughter of Bruce Banner and Thundra. Now, when it comes to the Savage She-Hulk, while I will touch on, like her dynamic that she's going to have on the team and more legitimate reasons as to why I'm putting her up here and her personality and stuff, like I usually do with every other member in the team I recruit, I want to talk about the reason why I'm exclusively choosing her. Because when I was talking about how this is a team that really should, like, kind of go against together because of who they are and their dynamic, she's also one of the people who brings out the most precedents for why this team is kind of like just thrown together or why it might not work. Because traditionally, when you look at everybody on the team that I'm going to put up here, Lyra is the most hero based character on it. She's the one who has the most pure intentions and everything. And she's the one who usually revels against the dynamics such as what we are putting together. However, when it comes to her, like I said, one of the reasons, just like with Thundra, is because I am interested in her character. I want to see more of her character. her personality, her origin, her dynamic is cool. But I know that she's a Hulk character. She's always in a lot of Hulk-based books. And I don't read Hulk books. I don't read stories about Hulk. So I want to see her more outside of the world of Hulk. She's appeared in other stuff too, like other events and like Avengers Academy, but she didn't really have like no real prominence. She's really prominent in Hulk character stories. But again, I don't read Hulk. Two, just like with certain teams, like in the DC universe, like the Green Lanterns, I feel like having all of these different Hulks is a problem, especially if they all end up having the same type of ideology or ideal going on, which is they don't always like have the most strongest of powers or whatever when it comes to being related to the Hulk, or that they're all heroes. If Hulk just wants to be left alone, if Bruce just wants to be a hero and wants to be separated from Hulk, Red She-Hulk is a character who doesn't understand Hulk, but she's forced to be a Hulk, and when she's forced, she's fine. Jennifer, she's forced, but she isn't fine. It's like you need to have a difference. So putting her up here, Lyra, where she can possibly be a part of another mindset or a part of another group who's like, I'm not a hero, as opposed to what she is in the comics, and she's siding along her mom or trying to take over and stuff. I think it brings a different type of dynamic and an interesting type of dynamic that we usually don't see that we could use to switch things up instead of always being redundant. Then there's like the normalcy of me having a regular problem of me not just, not knowing where to put her because she's really only litigated to the Hulk family, and that's where she usually deals with. And like I said, yeah, she's been a part of other teams and like she's been a part of the Avengers and stuff. And I guess I could substitute her for like a Hulk character that was on one of those teams. But it's like for the type of teams that I'm thinking about doing that with, there are other based characters around the Hulk that I think fit better. And there's like teams that I can make like, I don't know, a future Avengers team that's separated from 2099 and stuff. Or a team that's like similar to the war team that I was talking about. But like as she's defined within the comics now, I feel like a war team would be too advanced of a step for her immediately. I need to see how she trains and grows and comes to this type of warrior like state before I just throw her on a team that's made to hold off enemy lines and everything. I want to see how she does in a less structured full. I don't know. But you know my rule, you know my thing. If I have a dynamic and something that a character fits before I do any of these other teams, I'm gonna put her in the first team that I can fare her best in, and that would be a woman-based team because that's like I said, she is a woman who is a warrior, and she comes from that type of dynamic. But outside of that, like I said, the other reason is because okay, so again, I don't know much about the Hulk series or Hulk character lore because I don't read Hulk stories. But if I am correct, based off of what I've read on Lyra, as soon as she was like created or introduced, she either ended up getting her own series or was like her. If it wasn't her own series, they ended up throwing her into the main Marvel universe, and that's where she stayed for most of the part. And I feel like I don't like that because it's like I said, Hope doesn't want nothing to do with hers, and like the dynamic with her and the Hopes is kind of redundant. I kind of want to see what she's like with her mom. I want to see they didn't really. I don't think they really touched on like her being raised up and everything. I want to see her set more in within that alternate timeline, or more set in that prominent female world where we get to see how she grew up, how her ideas and philosophy come to where they are at. I want to see her training. I want to see her doing something like that. I want to see her more set up in the world that she's supposed to belong to, instead of just saying, you know what, we don't really like the alternative timelines because people don't like how they do this, do that. We're trying to converge all the worlds. Let me just throw her in there. And like, I want to know exactly what her dynamic would be with her mom. Because, like I said, Thundra, while she was chosen slash she earned her right, and she believes like strength and power is the only way for leadership, you have someone who's inherently a princess and someone who can look at it in a way where, well, this is mine. Everything that you're making is meant for me. But she also represents the power and the whole female dominance thing. So put it in a way where we could see her possibly challenging for the throne, or where her mom has to feel like she's worthy, or where she's rebelling against her mom at the same time while also aligning herself with her mom's philosophy would be cool. But yeah, so like there's a different reasons why I'm putting her up here. Outside of the fact, like I said, she's a warrior woman, and I really wouldn't know where to put her else. Cause like I said, she doesn't have prominence anywhere else for her outside of being connected to the Hulk. And I could make a Hulk family, but I don't know who I would do. Cause like I said, all the Hulks kind of sort of have the same idea going on. Oh, but the other reason I'm putting her up here is because I have this thing where I'm trying to be more visual because you know I'm a comic book creator and everything, so I'm trying to see things in a more physical, artistic point of view. So when I put my teams together, I think mainly about the dynamic and their characters and their stories. But there is a small part of me who looks at it and be like, who would look good on a team together? Seeing that I am putting another type of Hulk character up here who's a female, on top of the fact that she is Thundra's daughter, I feel will look like a good aesthetic. So I'm gonna put her up here. But when it comes to like her personality and stuff, let's jump back into that. Because when it comes to Lyra, outside of the fact, like I said, that she can represent like the strength, the power, and the legacy of what Thundra is creating, she is a character who I think it's like she's not as strong as the Hulk, or she can get to that point. But I want to see like what type of power dynamic she has with her mom, and like I just want to see her in a way where she's learning. This is a learning of her. Like she's learning to weed out what is essentially the good and the bads of society, right? Because when you look at Hulk stories, they're usually against society. So that one is fine. But where you can put it in a way where it's like, dad was wrong, well, part of my dad was wrong, and all this other stuff, I want to see that type of dynamic. So that's one reason we're putting up here. But as for the other reason, while typically she's the one character up here who you would say does not fit the team due to her personality and her mindset within the comics, I feel like at the same time, in a way, she could be put on this team as kind of the rallying point, the one person who is either in the middle with the morals and the ethics, or the bridge between the people that want to conquer and want to fight. She could be the one who could be the bridge or like that anchor ground so that Thunder doesn't go off mission if the mission is if we conquer and we're strong, we can protect. Or she could be the person who's like the middle ground in which because of her lineage, she could be like, protect what? The world is corrupt as it is, it's evil, and she can split the fracture between those who want to conquer to protect against those who just want to conquer, or those who feel like it's a lost cause. I just like war. I feel like she could be that rallying point. She could be a rallying point any way it goes, no matter what type of side you take. She could be the one who is sent out to recruit people or scout what places need them. Or she could be the one who's like trying to add some sense of morality or emotional depth because she is an emotional based character. So she could try to add some type of softness or sympathy to these characters. Anyway it goes, I want to put Lyra up here. And when it comes to like her individual story, I feel like this is where Lyra will be able to shine more prominently than what she does in the 616 universe. I mean, even though, you know, when I'm making this team, they're all in the same universe. But like if you was to take this dynamic and put her on the FEMiZONians, I feel like this is a team where she, as an individual arc, you can see it where she is there with our other female Hulk character, in which she can be more of a mentor or look at her in a way where she's like trying to gain her father's respect or step away from her father or whatever the case may be and stuff like that. So like I said, Lyra's gonna be the second member that we put. And speaking of female Hulk character, the last female Hulk character that we were gonna touch on in this video, we were gonna add Red She-Hulk, aka Betty Ross. Now, when it comes to the Hulk mythos, and like people who are not Hulks, or people who I know who deal with the Hulk, Betty, for Betty to usually just be a normal human or a girlfriend and litigate to the way that I hate how people litigate women in fiction, she works for me, and I think it's really interesting. Now, like I said, I don't read Hulk stories, but knowing that one, she becomes Red Hulk and knowing exactly how Red Hulk looks and like kind of the idea and how she came up and everything, Red Hulk is really cool. Red She Hulk is really cool. And being that she's connected to Red Hulk or General Thunderbird Ross, who is another one of my favorite Hulk based normal characters, who is one of my favorite when it comes to like the military or rivals, there's a few reasons in why I'm gonna put Betty up here. Like I said, I've never really read a story that dealt with Red She Hulk, rather than be a event or actual Hulk based story. So adding up here will be cool because one, she looks amazing. She looks amazing. And I've always, like I said, Betty, no matter what form you take her in, she's a character I've always digged. And when I say what form you took her in, I mean like I'm not sure if there's another Red She-Hulk. Like there's been other Hulks or like there are multiple She-Hulks, right? But like I know she's been Harpy. I know she's been like Red She-Hulk and stuff. And I know like she's been her normal baseline human standpoint, which is fine. But like adding her to this dynamic, especially knowing like she was killed off and basically forced to be a Hulk, works for me. Because I feel like when it comes to her Hulk, she is one who is always mad and rose in her power. But like I said, I feel like when it comes to certain Hulks, you should have those who don't want to worry about not hurting nobody or who don't want to worry about being okay. And for the most part, Red She Hulk, she's known to be full of rage and basically have no type of self control or type of drive outside of wanting to fight. When it comes to a warrior based woman in a dynamic like the one we are doing, that works perfectly for me. In a way which I want to see like she's okay with not, wanting to be human. Maybe, we have times where she's like she hates the Hulk because of what it does to Bruce, how she's separated from Bruce. But now that she can see what the world is like, or now that she can roll in the power, maybe and this is a team that she doesn't have to worry about not being mad, or she's able to revel in how she's always mad and basically has no control of her actions, and which will fit the team perfectly. And she can start to understand where Bruce and the Hulk have been coming from. But outside of that, knowing that she's connected to her father, who her father is, and what she's usually litigated to, or how her father handles stuff, you could put her on this team in so many different ways, such as maybe she's there in a way which her dad put her into the team to get knowledge and information about people who he think is a threat. Maybe she's there to learn how to fight better. Maybe she's there for, like I said, so many different ways that between her interaction with Bruce and or Thunderbolt, she could be added to this team. And as I was saying, like with Lyra, if you want to look at her in this perspective where she can either try to train Lyra in a mentoring way,
or even be opposed to her because she's like, you're a product of Bruce that I never get to be a part of, but it's not really there. That's interesting. And she could try to watch out for him or try to make it where it's like Bruce is not a bad guy and try to explain to her so she understands her father better. Even though, like I said, this might be a team where you step away from the men altogether. But when you want to look at her role in terms of her place alongside Thundra, Thundra could respect her. Thundra could respect her, or it could be one of those things where it's like she tries to make it seem like men are weak or men are not weak. And Betty's like, men have their flaws. But Bruce, the reason you chose Bruce is because of this. Or Bruce, there's different ways of being strong. You're thinking of strength in power and in combat. Bruce had strength in mentality and spirituality and helped the team grow that way as well. So they can have more dynamics and more ways of conquering and stuff to their goal and stuff like that. But outside of that, y'all remember when I said that in the beginning, we're gonna add two other members to make it a 7-member team, and that no matter what, any member of this team can be used as a frontline agent or support staff member for real, especially certain ones. Betty is one of those people who could be used as a frontline agent, and she could be used on the support system. Because we all know, usually when it comes to Betty, she's a scientist. She's a scientist who usually deals with like biochemistry and biology and stuff. So seems that this is a team that deals with like conquering or have genetic engineering background, and the fact that these women are infertile or genetic pregnancies are dangerous, or that you had someone who was like Lyra who was genetically composed of two different forces. Why not use Betty here as well to try to establish in what ways are the best way to repopulate our society in which we are stronger? What is the best strength combination when it comes to genes? How can we reverse the effect of our infertility and stuff like that? So that's why I'm gonna add Betty up here. Outside of the fact that she looks cool and I wanna really see her as the Red She Hulk and wanna see more of her like the others without having to read a Hulk story, she can be used as the genetic engineer or the biologist or the maintainer of health or whatever. So we're gonna put Betty up here as well.
So now that we got all of that established, like I said, we're going to be doing a 7-member team. Uh, Members who can be used as supporting staff or frontline members. But like I also said, this isn't going to be a team who's just like purely genetic based experiment or purely human or alternative timing or whatever, right? And with that being said, knowing that we already got all three of the Hulk adjacent based characters out of the way, the next two people we're going to add are more human based in a way, but I still feel like there's a genetic aesthetic to them because one is a mutant and the other one is a utopian. I'm not really sure what the whole deal between one of them is, but while as a team, Thundra is going to be the leader and the queen. Then you have her daughter Betty. We also need to look at the fact that when it comes to like an Amazonian type of monarchy or hierarchy or whatever you want to call it, they usually have some type of enforcer or trainer. And that's what our next two members are essentially going to be. The first one, we're going to talk about the mutant. The first one we're going to talk about is the mutant that I said we were going to add. Because I know, one, that's more of my realm when it comes to the world of Marvel. I know not everything about X-Men mythos, but a great amount. And they're my favorite thing about comics. But also, she's, like I said, she's the one who, though she's new, she's
more of someone who I understand what their deal is outside of the other person I said I was going to name. And the person we are going to add is one of the most newest and yet most interesting and complicated, maybe a little bit more fleshed out than she should be, characters that have arrived within the Marvel Universe within the last few years, specifically when it comes to the mutant mythos. And that is a character known as Isca the Unbeaten, or Isca the Unbeatable, more likely. And she is what they refer to as an Araco mutant or an Iraqi mutant. Now, for all of those who are not familiar with the recent changes to the X-Men mythos or lore, or who doesn't know what this character's real deal is, I'm gonna try to explain to you in the best way I can. But please be reminded that because the Krakoa era is so expansive and it's recent, and that I don't usually read books as soon as they come out. I have to learn about them through other sources and everything due to a complicated connection and history when it comes to my household and comic books. On top of the fact that I'm also, in school and dealing with health and everything, that while I may seem to understand or like this character, I'm still reading throughout the Krakoa era and still trying to understand all the ins and outs of it. But according to what I understand so far, based on who she is and what the concept of the Iraqi or Araco type of mutants are, Isca is a mutant who, like I said, is referred to as an Araco mutant. And Araco mutants are basically Omega level based mutants. They're like a dimension full of mutants who are all Omega level based or beyond, right? I think that's the concept. It was either them or the mutants who were on Mars, but I think it's the Oracle mutants, and I think they just end up moving to Mars. But anyway, it goes. When it comes to the Oracle mutants, the history behind them is that basically there was a landmass, a pairing of sorts, of an island that was one particular mass. And that island was, of course, the island of Krakoa as we know it, or as we originally have known it to be within, like, before the days of giant size X-Men, right? And Oracle was the other part of the island. Something happened where the island got cut into two, and once it was cut into two, there was an event where a demon, I believe, or some type of entity basically cast it off into another dimension. And through that dimension were all this mutants on this island or part of this separated landmass. And within this dimension, it was constantly overran by demons and attacks and hordes day after day after day after day after day. They were like with no reprieve, no time for rest, no time for settling or anything. So because they're in a state where they're constantly always fighting, trying to keep their home protected or keep their own lives intact, they're always using their powers. And because they're always using their powers are always evolving and being pushed to limits or being used in ways that they never thought possible, to the point where everybody who was stuck on this landmass, every single one of these mutants have become an Omega level mutant or beyond. But of course, that's just a power dynamic view of it. Internally, like when it comes to their mindset and how they process emotions and philosophy and everything, they basically align with the concept that we are dealing with when it comes to the FEMiZONs. They believe that weakness it's bad. Like you can only survive or prove yourself through war, through combat. So that's one of the reasons we're choosing Isca because I feel like she fits this dynamic perfectly. But outside of that, when it comes to the character of Isca in itself, one, she's a character I would love to use. She seems interesting and everything, But because I've already made so many different X-Men based teams, there's only a few others that I feel like I could make or should make. And because she's so new and so specific, I wouldn't know if I should put her in one of those teams or if she fits perfectly in one of those or where she will fit better at. But because of who she is and type of dynamic and stuff that she has applied to her, she fits better on this team anyway, most likely. But that's just that in itself. But like I said, when it comes to her specifically, she's a very specific character in the way that her powers and her origins work that I feel could be applied to this team in a way that actually helps the team grow that I really didn't think of before when I was like planning this team out. Because originally I planned on using a different type of a rocket mutant, but now that I'm looking at what I'm doing and like really thinking about it, now that I'm putting everything into words and recording, I feel like Isca is better. And I'm gonna tell you why. When it comes to the powers of Isca, her power literally is explained as she is not capable of losing. That's pretty much what it is. Her powers put her in a position or make it to the point where she will always win. However, the way it's seen or the way that it works is kind of complex to the point where you would say that that's not reliable. But because of how it's not reliable, I feel like it's a thing that can be seen as an advantage and a disadvantage when it comes to this team. And here's what I mean. The way her power works is that it's not really probability, but at the same time it is. But it's not like she's consciously manipulating it. She doesn't have, it's sort of kind of like Domino's powers, but more, I guess, abstract or more defined, more situational based because it's simply due to the fact of what she will win. But like I said, the reason I say it's not really probability manipulation is because it's not an active power. Her power is not active. It's not something she has any type of control over. It just happens. And that's why I say it's more of a liability or unreliable than anything. Because it's more of a curse than anything. Like it's a curse and a gift at the same time. Because she'll always be on the winning side. However, if the side or whatever probability shows that she's about to lose, she is forced to join the winning side. It's nothing she can fight against. Like it will be made to where she irrefutably has to be put on the winning side, whether she wants to be or not. And that's why I say it's unreliable. And when you're looking at it like that, you'll be like, yeah, it is unreliable. Because the way I first thought about it was, well, you never know she's going to turn on you. You never know she's going to turn on you or whatever. But at the same time, like I said, it seems that it's a curse. And that's how her powers work with this type of dynamic. I feel like it could work. Because when you're dealing with warriors, right? Warriors can be full of hubris. They think because they're the strongest or the toughest or the most disciplined when it comes to combat, they will always win. But when you have a character like this who you can always tell that for the most part we're going to win. But if we don't, then there's a problem because she always wins. And if she's forced to lose sides, that makes them sit back and reevaluate themselves, reevaluate their planning, readjust how they see themselves in the limelight, how they see their plans, how they see their missions, their tactics. It helps them reevaluate and become better. It helps them grow and adapt. That's why I feel like she will be a good fit on this team. Not only due to that type of element and growth that she can add to the team as a whole and to their stories, but it will make her a point in which each of them grow individually as well. Thundra has to reevaluate how she leads or her plans. Lyra has to reevaluate her moral center. Betty has to reevaluate her chaos and how she applies it, or how she evaluates or eliminates how she uses her engineering skills and stuff like that. And then not only is you evaluating, you're bringing character growth and development, and you're also changing the dynamic of possibly the objective and the dynamic and the mission of the team in itself. But if you take her components of the character within itself, why wouldn't she be a good enforcer executioner? If she's always going to win, the people you got to enforce or the people you got to execute, they have no chance. If you've always been in a place or scenario where you're always fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting, you have the ability and the skill and the know-how, the knowledge and experience to train others. If you've been on great rings and guidance councils and everything, you have what it takes to help plan things out. So, like I said, I think adding Isca to this team is a good choice. Now, as far as the other member that I said I was going to add up here goes, when it comes to like making someone an enforcer or a trainer or executioner or whatever you want to call it, that person is going to be the character of Princess Zarda, aka Power Princess or something like that. And if you know who she is, great for you, I guess. I know that she is a character in the Marvel Universe within the comics. However, when it comes to me and my knowings of her, I have only experienced her within the Avengers Assemble animated series that came on Disney XD, right? And we know that she's been a part of like the Squadron Supreme or whatever. And for all intents and purposes, I thought she was like not as Guardian per se, but some type of person from a realm. Whether or not that is the case or not, it isn't. But that's besides the point. Because I know whether it's a character from the movies or the comics or whatever, when I use them, I use them. It seems that she is a Marvel character, I can use her for this team. It seems that she is a warrior character, I'm going to use for this team. And she's a woman. So, anyway it goes. Like I said, I'm going to use Princess Zarda. And it seems that I don't know anywhere else to put her because I don't really know who she is. I'm not going to plan on putting her else anywhere anyway. So I'm going to use her here. And that's going to be that. But based off of what I understand about her character, I believe she's from a species known as the Utopians or something like that. And like I said, she's pretty much a warrior-based type of character like Thor, in a sense. And when it comes to her whole idea, okay, so basically the little information I looked up in regards to her character, because like I said, I thought her character was pretty cool in the Avengers Assemble series. And when I was thinking about this team, I was like, wait, Princess Zarda, she's cool. Like, I like her character. I like what I'm seeing. I like what I'm seeing and how she's portrayed in this. I haven't read her in the comics, but according to TV show, she seems pretty unique. So I'm going to use her right here. So according to what I looked up about her character, the whole basis and foundation and ideal of this character is that she is Marvel's answer to DC's universe's character of Wonder Woman, right? She's an immortal princess of power who grew up or was raised in a hidden society, who has troubles understanding the modern world. And now that I'm thinking about it, if that really is how she is or what her character is defined to in the world of the actual comics instead of just being the TV show or whatever, then yeah, that makes sense and it actually aligns with who she was within the animated series that I mentioned, which would say that she was a fair, accurate portrayal. Because in the animated show, while she may have been a part of Squadron Supreme or whatever, her whole concept seemed to be like, you fight with humans, you're weak.
war should be about glory and honor and combat and tradition. And you're trying to save these humans. Wouldn't it be better to do this and do this? Or wouldn't it be better to kill these people? Or wouldn't it be better to be alone? And all these other type of stuff, right? And that's basically who she was. Like, she didn't understand the acts of heroism. She didn't understand humans. She didn't act in the goodness of her heart to protect these people. She questioned everything. She was always wondering why humans did what they did. And she was always talking about glory and honor and how combat should be the strive of any being who feels like they matter, right? And when you look at it like that, seeing as how she is a person who, again, strives for glory and honor and loves the tradition of combat, of course that would mean that with the type of dynamic we are dealing with on the team we're putting together, she would be a great asset. But in a way where she seems very impetuous, I guess, very strong-minded, strong-willed, or very I don't know what the word is. Maybe it's because she's, like I said, a princess. I don't know much about her princess origin or whatever. But yeah, like I said in the beginning, this team is going to be like half a team who you can see joining forces and half a team who you can see them trying to kill each other. I could definitely see her trying to overthrow or manipulate Thundra, which again, I'm going to add here, even though it's going to get the concept, because I feel like that will make it dynamic in a type of conflict that's interesting story-wise, where they respect each other, but at the same time, it's like they challenge each other, like a Penelope and Hippolyta type of thing, but they could be allies. But they only differ in how they should be handling the world. Like I said, Thundra, she probably wants to make sure, like, the world doesn't go down again. Zarda, she doesn't really see, or she isn't really worried about the safety of Earth, if that makes sense. At least if you were to take the version of her I am the most familiar with, the version of her that was within the show. But even if you weren't to take that version, you were to take her version that's from the comics, based off of what I looked off at the comics, she seems to be more of a hero or more passionate or whatever. But anyway it goes, I feel like if you were to take concepts such as loyalty, she'll stay regardless. If you were to take the concepts of her, you know, seeing combat as a passion or just a way of life, and her being more prominent in it in her way of conquering or whatever, then yeah, I feel like she would definitely fit up here. But outside of that, like I said, I don't know much about her. But anyway it goes, when it comes to like her powers and her roles, I think the role of a trainer or an enforcer or an executioner works well because again, she's immortal and she grew up on a society full of warrior women. So seems that she's seen over 500 years old. She has the experience and the knowledge to train others. For her to be ruthless, like she's described to be, or relentless, or for her to question people's methods and everything, she could definitely be an enforcer. She could definitely be an executioner, or whatever you want to call it. And on top of the fact that she has the powers and the origin, like I already talked about, I don't know if this is in the comics or just the show, but she has like a hammer that she can create stuff out of. She can create stuff to like genetic experiments and training them so she can always put them in a battle ready conflict or bring assets to the battlefield. On top of the fact that like she's also, I think the utopians are like genetic species. So she adds the genetic variation that we're working with too. So for that reason, and other reasons such as me thinking her appearance was cool, on top of me not knowing else what to do with her, but thinking she was cool enough for me to use her even though I don't know much about her, we're gonna add Zarda to this team. So we got our leader, we got our two frontline bruisers, and then we got our executioners or trainers, whatever you want to call it, right? So we have our people who are more or less human-based people, on top of them having like mutations or genetic anomalies or whatever. But like I said, there's gonna be a 7-member team, and the two other members they're going to be aliens. And the reason I'm adding these two particular ones that I'm about to add, you'll probably figure it out when I name them. But one of them, actually both of them, are going to be like our harbingers or whatever you want to call them, or evaluators, I guess. I don't know what really the term would be to use for them, but they're going to be added on team two. And these are two of the people who, again, could be on the front line, because when they're on the front line, they're real deadly. But they could be like supporting staff members as well. But I feel like their supporting staff roles are more towards their actual individualized character universes. And that's because the last two people we are going to add is Proxima Midnight and Deathbird from the Shi'ar Empire. Now, Proxima Midnight, she is one of the so-called Daughters of Thanos or Black Order members. And the reason I'm adding Proxima is because, one, she's cool. I love her look. I love the whole Black Order. The whole Black Order is cool. But I feel like outside of the entire Black Order, her and Cole Obsidian, they are the ones who are less than prominent. But for you to have like a giant ogre or a lady who has a magical trident or whatever, I don't think they get enough respect. So I'm gonna use her here on top of the fact that I think she's cool, and there's very few space teams that I could think of doing or that I would do because I'm not a cosmology person. But I can see it where, since Thanos is all about conquering, he's all about death and combat and conquering the galaxy, conquering death itself and putting his influence in the universe. What if he put Proxima here on the FEMiZONs to gain intel for next time he needs to rule Earth or take over Earth, or he wants to collect people into his team, right? And the same thing for Deathbird. Deathbird is a part of the Shi'ar Empire. The Shi'ar Empire is all about cultivating other societies. She's all about death and war. It's in her name. She's Deathbird. She's one of the most formidable people on the Shi'ar Empire. She's part of the Royal Guard. She's been a teacher for like the Xavier Academy when it came to warrior methods and everything. And what if the Shi'ar sent them or sent her to try to figure out how to cultivate the earth and part of their empire if they ever came to the point where they wanted to? You see what I mean? Especially since the Shi'ar is known for taking over like the Kree or the Skrulls or whatever the case may be. So they're going to be the ones who are like evaluating and harvesting those other places for them to conquer. So while Thundra and the main team are worried about protecting and survival and stuff, these people are more like intel gatherers or just cultivators, while also being there to show them the ruthlessness that combat still has and making sure that combat doesn't lose its meaning, if that makes sense. But yeah, you guys, those are my FEMiZONs. Kind of a complicated team, kind of an antagonistic one, but it's a team that I think work, especially if you was to write a story about it. It may get mixed views depending on who writes it and how it's written, but I feel like if you put the right attention into it, the right artist, the right storyteller, this could be a great story. But those are my FEMiZONs. That is the first team we are recruiting for this month in dedication to National Women's Month, Women's Celebration Month, or whatever you want to call it. The next team I might do for this month may be like the actual Amazons from DC, or if not the Amazon in the DC sense, just a team of Amazons from across multiple franchises, seeing that the Amazons aren't specifically dedicated to DC. They're an adaptation in DC from the real myth, or I might do like a A-Force team for the MCU or something. I don't know yet. But yeah, guys, let me know what you guys think about my FEMiZONIAN team. Who's your favorite member on the team? The least favorite member that I didn't put on the team. Who will your team consist of? Is there any other place I could read about Red Hulk's daughter, or She-Hulk, Lyra, or Thundra, where I wouldn't have to pick up a book about the Hulk in general? How did you feel about Isca the Unbeaten? Where is a good place to start reading about Zorda? Um, what are some other female-based teams you would like me to handle? And if this was a story or a team to be put together, who would you like to write it? Let's add that question for today. But other than that, like I said, those are my FEMiZONians. And I think I've described every member and stuff typically well. Like, I didn't really dig into like each of their roles and what they will be doing, but I kind of did at the same time. So yeah, that's all I got for y'all today. Until next time, y'all know what it is. I'm gonna catch you guys later. Deuces.